Hi, everybody, and welcome on this beautiful Thursday. I hope everyone's enjoying their morning. Today, we're really excited to have Sammy Jo Lawson from El Paso County Public Health with us today to discuss a lot of very important matters as we are in post-COVID. Before I introduce her and what she'll be talking about today, I want to tell you a little bit about the SBDC. We provide free consulting, practical training, and business resources, as well as recovery and continuity for small businesses in El Paso and Teller County. If you would like to receive free consulting, you can head to pigspeaksbdc.org. We work from startups all the way to mature businesses, and we need to thank our public corporate sponsors, El Paso County, Ents Business Banking, the City of Colorado Springs, Park City Bank and Trust, Colorado Springs Utilities, Vector Bank, and the SBA. So again, if you have any questions in regards to your small business or anything that Sammy Jo talks about today, you're more than welcome to reach out to us. My name is Mackenzie Tamayo, as you can see here, and I'm the COVID-19 Program Manager for the SBDC. So Sammy Jo is here today, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about food truck safety. And some of the legalities behind that. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to post them in the chat, and I will field those questions and we'll answer those at the end, as she might cover the questions that you might have. So Sammy Jo is the Retail Food Program Manager with El Paso County Public Health. Thanks for being with us today, Sammy Jo, and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mackenzie. I appreciate it. And good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking some time to listen to a few reminders for those of you who have been in the food truck business for a while. And then also I'm hoping to provide some good information to those of you who are maybe new to having a food truck or maybe thinking about it. So as Mackenzie mentioned, I'm going to go over some basic essential food code requirements so you know what we're really looking for as an expectation for an inspection in the field, and then also just while you're at events. And on that note, we're going to talk about special event planning. So maybe special considerations to think about if you have an event for multi-day. We'll also talk about cottage food, since that is a very common question we get a lot of times. So we'll go over some of those details, as well as licensing, so you can know what to expect if you will be licensing with El Paso County Public Health. Next slide. Okay, so first and foremost, what I want you guys to think about is the biggest thing we need to make sure we have is an approved commissary. So what I mean by approved commissary is when you are licensed with El Paso County Public Health, as a part of the application process, you do have to fill out where you are going to be doing any of your prep work, if you're, say, a full large service mobile unit, or maybe you need somewhere to get water, dump water, just basically anywhere you are using. The important thing to know is that as a mobile food truck owner, you cannot utilize your house for storing food, for prepping food, anything like that. So what we really want to make sure that we are on the same page with is where are you doing any of those activities and making sure that they're not your house. Another really important piece as a food truck owner is we need to make sure you have a proper hand washing sink. So as we've known, even pre-COVID and now post-COVID, we're getting back to those food safety basics. So make sure that your hand sink is properly working on your unit itself. Make sure that it has soap and paper towel. And it does need to have both hot and cold water. So just like in a normal full service restaurant, if you have a mobile unit and there is no hot water on that unit, that is closure. So it's really important that you check these things before you drive out and are serving food in the public. Next is working equipment and proper food storage. So I have my little infographic there to the right to demonstrate these are the temperatures that we're looking for. So any coolers, we want to make sure are holding food items 41 degrees or below. Any hot items, we want to make sure are 135 and above. We want to keep food out of that danger zone in between that 41 and 135. So again, really important to know that, and make sure you have a working thermometer so you can verify that as you're out there serving your food. And next, we want to make sure we have proper food handling. So bare hand contact is not allowed with ready to eat foods. So as you're preparing that food for their plates, or as you're about to give that to the customer, make sure that you are wearing gloves when you're handling any ready to eat food. You can also use utensils, but we just can't have bare hand contact. And next, especially now with COVID, has taught us a lot about sick employee policy. So remembering not only are we worried about COVID, but also think about all the other foodborne illness things that we're worried about, such as norovirus. So to be safe, ensure that you do not have a fever. Make sure that if you have any nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, any of those signs, symptoms, you should not be handling food. And I understand that as a food truck owner, this can be challenging, especially if you are the only person who's running and operating this truck. If you have those signs and symptoms, think ahead about what does that mean for you? Do you have anybody else trained that could potentially help you that day? Or do you need to reconsider if whether or not you can even go out that day? Because again, we want to prevent foodborne illness. So the best way to do that is stay home if you're sick. Next is adequate power supply. So life happens, things happen. So make sure that you're prepared with a working generator. Sometimes if you're parked somewhere that maybe in the past did provide you a power supply that you didn't need a generator, but it is always good to have that backup generator or backup plan as to what you're going to do if you lose power, given that a lot of your equipment is going to need that for operating those sinks as well as your equipment. Next slide. Okay, so this is really where I wanted to spend some time for special event planning. As we're getting into summer events, it's really important to think about how maybe, for example, your hot dog, brat, and hamburger food truck, and normally you have a steady volume, you know what to expect during the day, how many you're going to sell of. But if you're showing up now that special events are back up and running outside in our community, and you might be spending more than one day out, and you are going to have likely a much larger volume of food to be worried about. The things that I want you to really consider is how are you going to safely store that additional food? So this is where the distance to your commissary is going to become really important, because as a mobile food truck, your license is valid across the state of Colorado. Doesn't matter necessarily who it is issued by. If you have one from El Paso County Public Health, for example, you could go to an event on the western slope of the state. That mobile license will be recognized there. But now if your commissary is in Colorado Springs, that's not going to help you very much during that event. So you're really going to want to think about if you need to partner up with a different facility closer to the event for needing water, dumping water, maybe a storage place for your backup food. Maybe you just need a truck or trailer additionally that can hold that food for you under temperature. So those are things that I really want you to think about. And then on top of that, if you're doing a multi-day event, you're going to have more food. You might have to do more prep work in advance. So where you normally might cook to serve, you might have some food items that you in advance have to cook, cool down, and then reheat. Now, that cooling process, that reheating process, those are the two most important steps in preventing foodborne illness. So it's really important when you're cooling, you move through that danger zone we just talked about as quickly as possible. So you don't have things tightly wrapped inside coolers. You let them breathe, you cut them into smaller portions. And now when we're talking about reheating, you need to make sure that if it's something you previously cooked, it gets all the way up to 165 degrees within 2 hours, which means you're likely going to have to do that on a grill or on a stove top. We do not like sternos to be used outdoors at a special event because just a swift breeze and you're out of luck. Those are put out and you're not able to hold that food temperature as required. So I really want to focus on reheating. Make sure you guys think about that in advance of how are you going to reheat and then hold that volume of food. So a really important consideration. And lastly, on this slide, I want to talk about a special event license versus a mobile unit license. So when we talk about a special event license, this is something we issue in El Paso County for a temporary setup, like fold out tables with a gas grill next to it, some coolers that are set on the side. This is not on an actual unit or a cart. So that is a temporary setup. You can have a temporary hand wash station where you have a 5-gallon catch bucket below with a spout that you're pouring that water out of. That is a special event license. And if you're somebody who's not really sure if you're you're ready for a mobile unit, this is a perfect way to start. You can go ahead and start with a special event license. And if you get a multi-day one, it'll last you the full calendar year. So you can go to as many special events in El Paso County as you want during that calendar year. So it's really important that you know the difference between that, because if you're licensed as a mobile food truck, that means we license that unit itself. So everything you prep and serve has to come off of that unit. You can't suddenly now add all these folding tables off to the side or add a pizza oven that you popped up next to the unit. That's not covered under your license. So we want to make sure that you make sure that you're utilizing your license and how you were approved. So if you want to do a combination of both, please connect with us, because likely we can come up with a way to get you that additional licensing for your additional setup that might be temporary for one event, or you might try it out more than that. So know that that is an option to you. And we're going to go over our website and where this information can be found in a minute. Next slide. Okay, so this is one of the biggest questions we get a lot. So back in 2012, the Cottage Food Act went into place. So what that means is in the state of Colorado, that there are food items that you can serve straight to the public without needing a retail food license from the county or any county. So what I wanted to provide in this is, I know there's a lot of information on this one slide, but don't worry, down at the bottom of this slide in blue lettering is colorado.gov/CDPHE/Cottage Foods Act. That's where you can get this information, as well as a lot of more additional information. So what we do is we can certainly help navigate when a retail food license is needed, when you're trying to serve something that no longer falls under cottage food. But ultimately, if you are a cottage food operator, you're actually going to be operating under CDPHE, the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. And you're not going to be working straight under us as El Paso County Public Health. So just know that those are two separate entities, two separate resources that you have. The big thing to know about cottage food is that these are oftentimes items that are shelf stable, such as baked goods. There are some allowances for jams and jellies, things like that, that have a pH of less than 4.6. So what that means is if you have a food product that you believe is cottage food, you very likely are going to have to get that pH testing done at any licensed laboratory. We do have one located in public health as well, but you can go to any licensed lab to have that work done. And that'll let you know whether or not your food item will meet that. As you notice, even as a cottage food person, there's actually still a fair amount of requirements under the state. So this handout will walk you through the labeling requirements. You still need to have some food safety training. There are some foods that are just flat out not allowed, regardless of their pH. So things like sauces and condiments and any drinks that you're trying to do, like juices, things like that. So there are some very solid no's that do not meet the definition of cottage food. And then there are some food items that might fall in that gray area. And that's where I would advise you to work through with CDPHE on where your food product would fall. And if it is something that would require a retail food license, that's where you would come to us and we can help you work through that. The other key piece to know is that as a cottage food vendor, you cannot serve that food across state lines. So you are very restricted and it can only be straight to the consumer. You can't go to sell it at the grocery store. You can't sell it at a restaurant and say, hey, I make the best jam and jelly and I'm going to sell it to this restaurant to use on their toast. That is not allowed. So once you're cottage food, you are separate and it has to be straight to the consumer. So I hope that you take advantage of this resource to help answer a lot of those food safety questions on cottage foods that we get. The other last thing I want to mention on this is you have to kind of choose one or the other. So you can't be a cottage food person and then decide, you know what, I'm also going to try and do a restaurant and I'm going to make my jam at home and then use that jam in my restaurant. Because remember, like I said, it has to be separated. So once you are considered a restaurant, everything has to be made and produced out of that licensed restaurant. So just keep that in mind. And again, special events is a great way to try out some of your food products. You can sell this at farmers markets. That's a way you can go straight to consumer. So a lot to consider there, and we're happy to help answer any additional questions you have on that as well. Next slide. Okay, so here's where we're going to get into some of that licensing that we talked about. So as El Paso County Public Health, there are two ways that a food truck will be licensed. It's either full service or prepackaged. And I know that I get a lot of questions about, but I only want to serve coffee. I'm not doing a full food menu. Well, unfortunately, the way that the licensing works for retail food, it's covered under the state. And so these are the two categories that we are given across the state to issue food truck licenses. So Paso County Public Health does not have the authority to create a new license type. That is something I get questions on quite a bit. But basically, a lot of our mobiles all fall under this full service. If you're prepackaged, what that means is we have some trucks that sell prepackaged frozen meals, like the Schwann's trucks, or we have some people who sell already inspected prepackaged meat, and that's something that could also fall under that prepackaged category. Otherwise, everything else is under full service. And there are two different ways that we will take an application for a food truck. Either you will be processed as what we call a change of ownership, or you will go through the full plan review process. So the difference between these two is if you have a mobile that has already been licensed, doesn't matter if it was in a different state, by different county, or if you had it billed by somebody who specifically built it to food code requirements, we will operate as a change of ownership on that. So we're looking at it as this unit should be to code. We don't have to go through a full plan review process to ensure that. So then you will go through it that way. And that's a way to avoid that plan review. If it is a unit that you built yourself, or maybe that you made specific modifications on, then we will have to go through that full plan review process. And that is a way that we can ensure that unit is up to food code. So something else I want to mention here is I said earlier that if you have a food truck license, you can use that anywhere within the state. There is one exception to that. City, County of Denver is different. So they are licensed separately from the rest of the state. So just be aware, if you go to Denver and get a license by them, you're likely going to need an additional one from somebody else within the state if you're looking for events outside of City, County of Denver. So that's one distinction I wanted to make. This little screenshot that I have down here with the blue and gray tabs, this is a screenshot straight off our website. So if you go to pasocountyhealth.org, which is also shown at the bottom of this slide, and you click on environmental health, retail food, you'll get to this page and it'll walk you through where each of these licensing packets are. So the first tab is where you would go if you had a brand new unit that you built yourself, that hasn't been previously inspected, you would go to that new/remodel tab. But again, majority of food trucks are going to be processed as a change of ownership. So that's the tab that you see open here. And the middle arrow shows mobile change of ownership packet. And that's what you'll have to fill out. And that's what will be submitted to us. And it'll walk you through how you can submit that application electronically. Otherwise, you can also come into our office hours. So we are still working through some COVID duties. So we have modified office hours to the public, but our office is open on Mondays and Thursdays from 9 to 3. So this is an opportunity to come on in. We have staff that are always available during that time to help you navigate which application is needed, how much they're going to be, and any questions you have on that process. And as a reminder, we are located inside the Citizen Service Center, which is on the second floor. And you're going to look for the Environmental Health Division sign. And we'll have some friendly, smiling faces there to help you out. So we're happy to take any of those questions that you have.
That's awesome, Sammy Jo. Lots of information, tons. So if they have additional questions, is the best thing to do to come in? Do you find that that's best for people to just come in and work on this with somebody? Or
Yeah, I would say applications are easier to handle in person sometimes, because the challenge with being remote is that in case you had a question on which one to use, they can point you in the right direction. You can fill it out while you're there. So that probably is the most efficient way to go about it. but everything is on our website too for reference, and they're fillable. So we tried to make that easier as well, that you can fill that out electronically and then just save it as a PDF and email it to us.
And then as far as the cottage foods go, is that an appointment that people need to make in order to ensure, or how does that work?
Sure. So that is often easy with a phone call or an email. You can certainly come in as well. But sometimes I know people like that peace of mind to have something in writing that says they were approved to serve XYZ. So we're happy to do that. That can come to either myself or just our team. We do have administrative staff who are wonderful and are great at helping tease out what needs a license and what does not. So our licensing team can help with a lot of those questions.
Awesome. Well, it's a lot of great pertinent information. And like you said, you can go to the website. And the great thing about your website and what I've learned in COVID is it's so easy to maneuver. So it doesn't need to be overwhelming, and getting licensing can sound daunting, but it doesn't have to be. So there's step-by-step, which you've all made very, very easy for the public to do that. So thank you to El Paso County Public Health for that. So, but if you have any additional questions, like Sammy Jo mentioned, you're more than welcome to reach out to El Paso County Public Health, or you can reach out to SBDC and we can field questions. We work collaboratively with El Paso County Public Health. And thank you, Sammy Jo, for being here and giving us that great information and walking us through all of that. Any additional questions, again, you can head to pikespeaksbdc.org if you'd like questions about this or any kind of training or pre-consulting as well. Thanks, Sammy Jo, for being here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.